Good morning, and welcome to the Monday, October 4th, 2010 edition of Inquisition Update. My name's Tom Friess, your host. I'll be with you here for the next hour. You're listening to LibertyRadioLive.com. Thank God for LibertyRadioLive.com, where the truth is told every day. And the truth seems strange only because we've been indoctrinated with a fiction. And we deal with those fictions here on a daily basis on Inquisition Update. Those futurist fictions, those Jesuit futurist fictions. Today I want to continue in the book Code Word Babylon by P.D. Stewart. Very informative book. We were discussing the Illuminati and Freemasonry as we ended the broadcast Friday, and we'll pick up where we left off there. But first, I have an article that came to me this morning by a listener. This article comes from Information Liberation, the news you're not supposed to know. This was dated October 2nd, 2010, just a couple of days ago. And by the way, I posted a link to this article in the chat room. And if you're listening and would like to participate in the chat room while the program is playing, you can go to www.libertyradiolive.com. And on the main page, click on the link to chat room. Sign in with a username and participate in the chat. Say good morning to all my friends in the chat room while you're there. And now we'll get to this article. This is a rather startling article, but one that's expected here at Inquisition Update. The title of the article is Students Tagged with RFID Chips in Smart Badge Program. This is by the author Chris from Information Liberation. Again, it was dated 2 days ago, October 2nd. It reads, high school and junior high students in Santa Fe are being forced to be tracked like prisoners with RFID badges and have their every movement monitored by the all-seeing eye of the state. Carefully chosen words there, all-seeing eye of the state. It's all in the name of safety, says the mentally deficient school's administrator, but students are saying they feel like prisoners. Santa Fe students in Santa Fe have to wear ID badges to class, complete with built-in tracking device. The Smart Badge program started this school year, and it's getting mixed reviews from parents and students. Patrick Mann is a senior and said he feels like he's a prisoner. Quote, normally, the one people you would track are, say, prisoners or somebody that's done something wrong, unquote, Mann said. Not only are the students being tracked while they're in the state-run schools, they're even being tracked while they're out of school as well. The sensors are in the ceiling on the campus, but Mann said they keep tabs on you off campus, too. Quote, at the Shell station, they can see exactly where I am, Mann said. I know that because the school cops come up there and say, hey, you need to get back to school. We tracked you over here, unquote. Apparently, a Shell oil station close by, and they can be tracked when they go over to the gas station for whatever reason. And it says, of course, in reality, this is to teach the children how to live as wards of the state. That's the real purpose of government-run schools and always has been, says the author. It's an old truism that the safest place on earth is in a jail cell. Gladly, our government-run schools are doing their part to make that a truism. To make that truism a reality. Now, again, I posted a link to this article in the chat room. You can go there and read the article for yourself, and there is also a video attached to this article. And that's the state that we're in, and it's only going to get worse. And remember, as we discussed about 2 weeks ago, Thomas Keene, the chairman of the 9/11 Commission, who investigated, I use the term loosely, who investigated 9/11, the congressional hearings of 9/11. He said that the efforts that the United States has placed to protect the American citizens from foreign terror now need to focus their efforts on means to protect the American citizenry from domestic terrorists. And I want to tell my listeners the only terrorists we need to protect the American people from are from the federal government itself. 9/11 was an inside job, was done by our own Jesuit papists in the White House, all of them papal knights. All the principal parties of 9/11 were papal knights. All the responsible parties owe their allegiance to Rome and not to the American people. And 9/11 is easily explained, as we've done here on the broadcast. Those who pay attention get it. Those who don't pay attention don't get it. They just keep receiving all the disinformation from the mainstream and the alternative media, and you can't bring them out of the darkness. You can't bring them out of the deception as hard as you try. But we keep trying here every day, and we're going to keep trying this morning. We're going to continue reading the book Code Word Babylon by P.D. Stewart, the subtitle of which is the Sons of Loyola and Their Plans for World Domination. This is talking specifically about the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. You can get this book, the most important book available out of the press today, having to do with the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. It's the newest thing to come out. You can get it from Lux Verbi Books. That's luxverbi.org is the website. You can go and purchase the book directly online. luxverbi.org. luxverbi.org. And call and order the book, and order two while you're at it. One to keep for yourself, and one to pass to a friend or family member who will put it to good use. And this is book one of a two-book series, the second of which I'm currently reading. I'm reading it on amateur radio, by the way, and it generates quite a great deal of opposition from Catholics and Freemasons alike. And I'm sorry about that, but the truth is more important than the intimidation that they can muster to try to silence the truth. So we continue on a nightly basis on amateur radio with P.D. Stewart's work, trying to help inform and alert the American people about the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. And I ask my listeners for prayer, particularly now. God has worked to open the eyes of a precious family member of mine whom I haven't heard from in days. And I fear that Satan is attacking and trying to destroy the truth. And very concerned about it. And I ask God's intervention. And I ask for the prayers of my listeners. Now, back to the book where we left off Friday. We're talking about the Illuminati, remembering that the Illuminati was an underground for the suppressed Jesuits. They were suppressed in 1773 by a papal bull, Dominus Ac Redemptor Noster, by Clement XIV, and Adam Weishaupt, a professor of canon law at Ingolstadt University, a Jesuit priest, formed the Illuminati as an underground for the suppressed Jesuits. And they resurfaced in Freemasonry. Freemasonry at the top is Jesuitism. The Illuminati is Jesuitism. Now, the subtitle of this portion of the chapter is entitled Still in Control and All Wrapped Up. The author writes, not only does the Illuminati power still exist, it controls the United States government through Freemasonry, the secret government. It is therefore interesting to note that a new resolution, House Resolution 33 of 2007, was introduced to the U.S. House of Representatives on January 5th, 2007, sponsored by Republican Paul Gilmore, Republican Ohio, calling for the recognizing the thousands of Freemasons in every state in the nation. And it says the resolution states in pertinent part, quote, whereas the founding fathers of this great nation and signers of the Constitution, most of whom were Freemason, whereas the Masonic fraternity is deserving of formal recognition for their long history of caregiving for the citizenry and their example of high moral standards. Now remember, we're talking about Jesuitism here. And whereas Freemasons have always revered and celebrated St. John's Day, that's a Roman Catholic holiday, celebrated St. John's Day, June 24th, the official feast day of the Jesuit Knights of St. John and the Catholic Order of the Knights of Malta, the author says in parentheses, as dedicated to their patron saints. Therefore, be it resolved that the House of Representatives recognizes the thousands of Freemasons in every state in the nation and honors them for their many contributions to the nation throughout its history. Unquote. Now, before we even go on, I want to remind the listeners that if you want more detailed information about Illuminism and about Freemasonry and how Jesuitism controls both, I recommend the book by John Daniel, The Grand Design Exposed. And you can get that book directly from John Daniel at 304-392-6155. That's 304-392-6155. If you don't have a copy of that book, I highly recommend it. John's been a frequent guest on this program. We haven't heard from him for a while. But his book is still available. You can get it directly from the author. Call him directly and order the book. Talk to John. He loves to talk about this subject. If you're interested in how Freemasonry controls our government, how Jesuitism controls our government through Freemasonry and through the Illuminati, John is an expert on it. And you can get his book, The Grand Design Exposed, at 304-392-6155. And if you can't write that down quick enough, send me an email at inquisitionupdate.com, inquisitionupdate@yahoo.com, and I'll make sure you get John's phone number. You can call him directly and have a talk with him. Now, again, it says, once again, we see that the Masonic secret government is up to its old tricks. This quote-unquote secret government, writes Bill Moyers, quote, has no constitution. The rules it follows are the rules it makes up, unquote. Professor Arthur S. Miller of George Washington University Law School confirms this to be a fact. He writes instructively, listen to what he says, those who formally rule take their signals and commands not from the electorate as a body, that is, not from the people, but from a small group of men, the establishment. It exists even though that existence is stoutly denied. It is one of the secrets of the American social order. Familiar word, social order, comes right from the Vatican. And it says a second secret is the fact that the existence of the establishment, the ruling class, is not supposed to be discussed. A third secret is implicit in what has been said, that there is really only one political party of any consequence in the United States, the property party, says the author. It says the Republicans and the Democrats are in fact two branches of the same secret party. Now, I'm sure P.D. Stewart's going to do an adequate job of telling us who it is that runs both political parties. But I constantly get email from my listeners about we need to throw the bums out. We need to vote in the Republicans. The Democrats have ruined our country. They're responsible for this financial collapse and all the other evils and horrors that are taking place. And Barack Obama is this or that. Let me tell you something. If anybody in this world should comprehend what's really taking place in Washington. It's my listeners. I talk about this all the time. Rome minted the political coin in this country. Heads as Democrats, tails as Republicans, and if you flip that coin, no matter what side ends up, the Pope wins. So you can be for the Democrats or for the Republicans, you're for the papacy. And the only legitimate discussion about politics among my listeners is this. The Pope controls both political parties. It doesn't matter who you vote for. If it is a Republican candidate or if it is a Democratic candidate, your only two choices, it is a papal candidate. So to gripe and moan about Barack Obama without mentioning who controls him just simply steers everyone to think that a Republican solution might suffice. And we stay in this tick-tock, 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 Hegelian dialectic, Democrat-Republican, Republican-Democrat, back and forth, and any American with a brain knows that we got to this Jesuit-led New World Order police state that's unfolding in the United States of America because of the Vatican's influence in politics, both parties. We got in this mess because Rome controls both political parties. Do you hear me? Do I need to repeat it 1,000 more times? There's only one legitimate political discussion among my listeners, and that is that the Jesuits advise and control the politicians, both Democratic and Republican. The Jesuits write all the legislation that is put before Congress. It comes from Georgetown University and Fordham University. I mean, look, the only way I can get my listeners out of this Hegelian nightmare is to just ask the Pope to come over and become the Speaker of the U.S. House. Just have Pope Benedict XVI come over and be the Speaker of the U.S. House. Or if that won't finally wake up anybody, just let him take over the Oval Office. Let him come and do the press conference every day. Then you might realize that it's not Democrats, it's not Republicans, it's not Barack Obama, it's not John McCain, it's not George W. Bush, it's not Bill Clinton. Tick-tock, tick-tock, tick-tock. The ticking of the clock has put us all to sleep. Anybody with a brain knows it doesn't make a damn what political party you vote for. You're voting for the destruction of this country. And the only way to stop this Hegelian dialectic is pull the curtain back on the stage and show the diabolical demon that is standing behind the curtain, pulling all the political strings in this country. And he wears little red shoes and a funky fish head hat. Until you get in your head that Rome controls everything, you know what you're going to do? You're going to do what you've been doing for months and months and years, and that is forwarding email about Barack Obama and forwarding email about George W. Bush and forwarding email about Bill Clinton and just continue the brainwashing. You know, we participate in our own brainwashing. Every email that you get about Barack Obama or George W. Bush or Bill Clinton or George H.W. Bush or Ronald Reagan needs to be scratched through with a pencil till it's blacked out and just plain respond to all or reply all. The Pope runs Washington. The Pope runs Washington. I've never received a substantive email about politics. It's just the mainstream media hype. My own listeners. It's shameful that we don't understand that we're participating in our own brainwashing. We don't need the mainstream media to brainwash us about the Democrats or the Republicans. We do it ourselves. Anything that comes in our email box, we just click forward. Bang! It goes out to everybody. It's the slickest form of brainwashing there is, and we all participate in it, without exception. Again, I know it's redundant, and I know that those who get it are rolling their eyes back in their head saying, oh, God, he's going to say it again. Yeah, I'm going to say it again. There's only one legitimate discussion about politics in this country. Only one legitimate discussion. Get it? One. The Pope rules Washington, D.C., Democrat and Republican. Barack Obama and Bill Clinton and George W. Bush and George H.W. Bush. The New World Order is a Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. There, I said it again. I'm still alive and I'm still breathing, and I'm going to keep on saying it till hell freezes over. We've just got to comprehend this, and we've got to tell other people and stop this endless self-deception by forwarding all these ridiculous emails that focus everybody's attention on the Democrats versus the Republicans versus Democrats. When are we going to get it? When are we going to get it? Do my listeners in the chat room get it? CJP, do you get it? Geo, do you get it? Angel, do you get it? Stop forwarding these stupid emails about Barack Obama or any of the other presidential candidates. There's only one subject worthy of discussion. That's the only subject that will get America out of its delusion, and that is the Pope controls both political parties in the country. Can't we just forward one email like that today? Can't we just write one of our own? The Pope controls both political parties in this country. It doesn't matter who you vote for, Democrat or Republican, you're getting a Vatican pick. Does that make sense? Look, that's so easy. In one sentence, you can inform all your family and friends. The Pope controls both political parties in this country. It doesn't matter who you vote for, you're picking for a papal pick. It's real easy. You don't have to study a lot of websites about the Democrats or the Republicans. You don't have to forward endless newspaper mainstream media articles for repeating the mantra of the talking heads. We've got to throw the bums out and get the other bums back in. You got to throw the Pope out, and the Jesuits out, and the Democrats out, and the Republicans out, and put God back on the throne in this country. And I'm not talking about making Catholicism the religion of this country. I'm talking about Jesus Christ, the Savior, and His book, and His law. Repentance is the only hope for this country. On LibertyRadioLive.com, there's an inquisition coming to this country, the likes of which the world can't even comprehend. I'm going to step out on a limb. Oh, it's a dangerous thing to do. But upwards of 100 million people in this country could die in the coming slaughter in this country. Do you comprehend that? And now, Tom, that's outrageous. Come on, you're just a fearmonger. You're just scaring the people. Am I really? Tell it to the Waldenses. Tell it to the Albigenses. Tell it to the early first century Christians who were lion food for Roman entertainment in the Colosseum. Tell it to the Huguenots. Tell it to the Jews who were slaughtered by the millions. And they only tell us about 6 million. But there were far more than that. Stalin killed more Jews than you can shake a stick at. Tell it to the Protestants who were burned at the stake by the tens of millions of people. And then tell me that I'm crazy to suggest that 100 million people could lose their lives in this country. I don't make outrageous statements. I make statements based on history and the scriptures and plain old logic. I'm just an Iowa farm boy, just a plowboy from Iowa, but God gave me a few neurons to work with and eyes to see and ears to hear. He gave me an understanding of the Scripture. He gave me ability to read and comprehend what I read. And what I read tells me, if you think that 100 million people couldn't possibly die in this country because of religious persecution, you haven't read the books that I've read. This author gets it, P.D. Stewart. Listen to what he says. We're talking about Illuminism and Freemasonry, Jesuitism. That's what we're talking about. How they run this country and the world. He says, in his magnum opus, his great work, Tragedy and Hope, Bill Clinton's Jesuit professor, Carroll Quigley. Now, notice that he didn't say Professor Carroll Quigley like everybody else does. No, he said Bill Clinton's Jesuit professor, Carroll Quigley. You see, that makes all the difference, doesn't it? To those who are beginning to comprehend the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order, they know that this isn't just any old Carroll Quigley. No, this is a Jesuit priest. It's all important, you see, because without mentioning that he's a Jesuit priest, the Vatican's totally disconnected. The message never gets across who Carroll Quigley works for, who his allegiance is to. It's to the Black Pope, the Jesuit general, who is at the top of this New World Order. You see, if it's just plain old Carroll Quigley, well, he's just an author. He's just a college professor. He must be an expert. We better read his book. But if he's a Jesuit professor, Carroll Quigley, you know something. You know something that nobody else knows. And those that do are afraid to talk about it. Did God give you a spirit of fear? Not me. He didn't give me a spirit of fear. He gave me a sound mind and hope and trust in a reality, in an assurity that this world, lock, stock, and barrel, belongs to the Creator and my Savior. And whether I live or whether I die, I can trust in Him that He will raise me from the dust of the ground, and I'll come back to sing His praises in His kingdom. I have no fear. I cannot be intimidated, and I'm going to call Carroll Quigley a Jesuit professor because that's the only thing that's going to educate God's people. Just one little word. Jesuit. Leave it out, and the world remains ignorant of the Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. Examine the emails you get today. Examine them. Before you forward them, make sure that every detail about who is running this country and the world is filled in before you forward it on. And if you can't take the time, just delete the thing. Don't continue to brainwash the American people by forwarding baloney email. I'm beating a dead horse, but that's the only way to bring him back to life. In his magnum opus, his great work, Tragedy and Hope, Bill Clinton's Jesuit professor, Carroll Quigley, revealed that Skull and Bones member William C. Whitney and others in the late 19th century developed a plan that would allow them control both major political parties in the United States by means of financial contributions and have those parties alternate power, tick-tock, tick-tock, Democrat, Republican, Republican, Democrat, alternate power so that the public would think it had a choice. Now let me read it again. I know it's difficult. You got the dog barking, you got the phone ringing, you got the television going, you got the radio playing in the background, the baby's crying, the coffee's boiling, the newspaper just hit the front door, somebody's delivering the milk, and besides that, you're trying to figure out what you're going to cook for dinner and what you're going to do after Inquisition Update's over, and you got 50,000 things on your mind, so I have to repeat this. In his magnum opus, Tragedy and Hope, Bill Clinton's Jesuit professor, Carroll Quigley, revealed that Skull and Bones member William C. Whitney and others in the late 19th century developed a plan. They developed a plan that would allow them to control both major political parties in the United States by means of financial contributions and have those parties alternate power so that the public would think it had a choice. The American people think they got a choice. That's cool, man. They go to the polls, they think they got a choice, and it doesn't make a damn who they vote for. They're going to get a Jesuit. They're going to get a Jesuit stooge. Oh, those American sheeple are so stupid. We just own both political parties, and they just keep going to the polls and vote. They'll vote whatever candidate we want. We don't care if he's Democrat or Republican. Whoever he is going to do what we tell him to do, or we'll shoot him in broad daylight with cameras rolling, and nobody will go to jail. And the American people think they're free. They think they got a choice. You wouldn't believe how stupid the American people are. That's what they're saying to you. That's what they're saying to you. That's what Jesuit priest Carroll Quigley is saying in his magnum opus, Tragedy and Hope. Sounds like an interesting book, doesn't it? Tragedy and Hope. You know, you ought to read it. You ought to get a copy of it and read it. I'm going to get a copy of it and read it. I'm going to add it to the 300 books in my library. And if God allows me to live long enough, I'm going to read all of those books. And if I have to, I'm going to read all of them right on Inquisition Update. If Liberty Radio Live lives long enough, I'm going to read every one of those books on this program. I can't get my listeners to read. So I got to read it for them. And I'm very happy to do it. I'm just blessed of Almighty God to be able to read these books on amateur radio and on Inquisition Update. If I could just get somebody that would listen. Here it goes again. In his magnum opus, Tragedy and Hope, Bill Clinton's Jesuit professor, Carroll Quigley, revealed that Skull and Bones, remember, if you're an initiate into Skull and Bones, you had to pledge allegiance to the Pope, you had to kiss his slippered toe, and you had to kiss the toe of Hiram Abiff, the Messiah figure of Freemasonry. And then, of course, you get to be dubbed a Knight of Eulogia, a Knight of the Most Holy Virgin, the Most Holy Eucharist by a caricature of Ignatius Loyola, the founder of the Jesuit order. You see, it's all roads lead to Rome. Forget Democrat and Republican. Every road leads back to Rome. Rome controls both sides of the political coin. Rome owns the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, and all the candidates. You get to go to the polls. Lucky you. You get to do your civic and patriotic duty by going to the polls to vote, but you get to vote for one of two papal picks. Makes you feel real patriotic, doesn't it? It ought to make you sick to your stomach. That's how you get Protestants, blind, deaf, and dumb Protestants, to serve the Pope. You get them to go to the polls to vote for a papal pick. Take their pick, Democrat or Republican. You serve the Pope. Go to the polls and bow to the papacy. That's what you do every time. You commit blasphemy every time you go to the polls. Is that strong enough terms? Am I waking anybody up? I'm sorry, and I know it's early. I'm being rude, I guess, trying to wake people up, but I can't hear myself think for the snoring that's going on. He said William C. Whitney and others in the late 19th century developed a plan that would allow them control of both major political parties in the United States by means of financial contributions, and have those parties tick-tock, alternate power so that the public would think it had a choice. This confirms what Professor Miller said about the Republicans and the Democrats being, in fact, not rumor, not innuendo, not hyperbole, in fact, two branches of the same secret party. You know what that secret party is? The Vatican. That's the secret party. They all work for the grand design. A Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. And you get to vote. Isn't that great? You get to participate in the electoral process. You, an educated American with a free press, informed on the issues, informed on the candidates, you get to do your patriotic civic duty. I mean, after all, you've got to protect the welfare, the future welfare of your family, your children, your great-grandchildren, your great-grandchildren's great-grandchildren, don't you? You got to make sure you get the right man for the job in Washington, D.C., So you put on your red, white, and blue, and you fire up your Chevy, and you drive down to the church. You walk in, you sign your name, and you get to vote for whichever one of the Pope picks they put forward. And when you go home, you puff up your chest. There, I'm a great American citizen. I just did my patriotic civic duty. I just protected my family for centuries to come. It doesn't matter what lever you pull. You're pulling for the Pope. Now do you feel patriotic? Do you think now maybe it's time to wake up and quit forwarding those stupid emails? Or do I have to repeat it 50 more times? I've only got 10 minutes left. I better get busy. He says, we saw one example of this alternate sharing of power when Skull and Bones member President George H.W. Bush was replaced by Rhodes Scholar Bill Clinton, who was in turn replaced by another Skull and Bones member, Republican President George W. Bush. Are you getting it? Here we have Republican George H.W. Bush, papist, replaced by Democratic papist Bill Clinton, replaced by Republican papist George W. Bush, And even now, George W. Bush is replaced by papist Barack Obama. And every president has torn away your Protestant liberties. No, it's not just the Constitution and Bill of Rights. It is a Protestant Constitution and a Protestant Bill of Rights. The target is Protestants and Protestantism. It is a continuation of the Counter-Reformation established by the Jesuit order at the Council of Trent in 1865. 1545. Get it through your head. It has everything to do with religion, nothing to do with politics. Politics is just a means to a Jesuit end. All politics is Jesuitical. Get it? It's all about religion. It's all about who we're going to serve. Are we going to serve Christ, or are we going to serve Antichrist? That's the choice. If you go to the polls, your choice is made for you. If you stand up and tell the truth to the American people that politics is just the Pope's puzzle, it's just the Pope's little game, then you're on the side of truth. It takes a little courage, but not much. Do you think we could muster up a half a dozen people today that would say that the Democratic and the Republican parties are both controlled by the Jesuits of the country? By the Pope of Rome? Could you stand the name-calling and the eye-rolling and the ridicule and the scoffing to tell the truth? Would you suffer the reproach of Christ to tell the truth? Or do you just bypass all that and forward all the Jesuitical nonsense that comes in your email box every day and just help the Jesuits brainwash all your friends and family and continue your own self-brainwashing? I tell you what, if the truth is not on your lips when you open your mouth, keep it shut. If you don't have the guts to tell all your email friends who really controls both political parties, shut off your computer. Otherwise, you just contribute to the deception that controls this country. You are contributing to the Inquisition that's coming to this country. If there's any hope at all in saving the potential of 100 million lives in this country, you have to tell the truth about the Jesuit Vatican-led New World Order. And you have to do it with as much conviction and fortitude, spiritual fortitude, that you can muster. And if you can't muster it, get out of the game. Go sit on the bench and take your licking from heaven until your rear end is welted and you're ready to stand up and tell the truth. He says, we saw one example of this alternate sharing of power when Skull and Bones member, that is papist, George H.W. Bush was replaced by Rhodes Scholar, that is papist, Bill Clinton, who was in turn replaced by another Skull and Bones member, papist Republican President George W. Bush. Even Bush's opposition in that presidential race, who was a Democrat, Senator John Kerry, was also skull and bones. He was a papist. They've got it all wrapped up. Now, let me ask you the question. Let's do a test. At the next presidential election, who are you going to vote for? Who are you going to vote for? A papist. That's who you're going to vote for, a papist. So as expensive as gasoline is, why would you waste one drop of it to go to the polls to vote for a papal pick and lend Christian Protestant legitimacy to a papal candidate, for Christ's sake? Am I making sense? Or am I just a ranting, raving lunatic, as I'm accused of every night on amateur radio? You know, Inquisition Update is a day off for me. I get to come here and I get to preach to the choir. Most of my listeners, those who pay attention, take programs like this like a browbeating. Don't take it that way. If the shoe doesn't fit, don't put it on. Just continue to do God's work. Tell the truth. But if you're one of my listeners who just keeps hanging on to the hope that all those emails are helping you and your friends, and if you're still hanging on to the hope that there's even a shred of truth being told in the mainstream and alternative medias, you need to put that shoe on. You need to lace it up so tight that the blood rushes out of your foot. Because you are the problem. You are contributing to the deception that the Jesuits have foisted upon this country. They have deceived you even to the marrow of your bones. God's people are not deceived. God's people come out of that deception. They read God's book. His Spirit speaks to their spirits, confirms the truth. And the truth is, this country is owned, lock, stock, and barrel, politically and religiously, to the papacy. And if you don't have the courage to comprehend that, and if you don't have the courage to share that with your friends and family and email partners and listeners, you just as well get out of the game. You're just static on a radio. You're just interference. You're just a narrowing of the bottleneck. You just choke out the truth with the multitude of email that you pass around friends and family. Get on your knees before God and repent of your ignorance. Pick up a book. Tell somebody about LibertyRadioLive.com. For once in your life, get it! It's a Vatican Jesuit-led New World Order. It's not Democratic or Republican. It's papal. My conscience will bother me the way I beat up on my listeners today, but on tomorrow.